the King of Adarlan returns to Rifthold, and Celaena cannot get far enough away from him. Though Chaol recognizes her terror, he doesn't understand it and instead is caught in the turmoil of his own thoughts. He wants to make sure Celaena wins, but struggles with his role in retraining the world's greatest assassin. With the final test so close at hand, Celaena convinces Nox to flee the castle and avoid death by Ridorak. Kaltain continues to lose her mental and physical autonomy, while Celaena uses Dorian to distract herself from the dangers that haunt her. On the day of the final battle, Celaena is able to successfully incapacitate Grave, but is poisoned before the final fight with Cain. She succumbs to the hallucinations of Bloodbane, only to encounter her foe on a completely different battlefield.
Hey there, we're Book Talk for Book Talk with Jac and Amy, your book besties who take the novels you love seriously. I'm Jac.
And I'm Amy, and we embrace and respect modern fantasy, romance, and romantasy books written by women. And so it's in our nature to analyze these books as we would any other novel we might have dissected in school.
With our combined 13 years of literary academic training, we use our education to analyze and give voice to reasons why you may love or hate today's popular books.
This week, we're discussing chapters 44 through 48 of Sarah J. Maas's debut novel, Throne of Glass. For a complete list of episodes and the chapter breakdowns, be sure to check out our Instagram at the handle Book Talk for Book Talk.
Before we dive in, let's talk about S.P.I.L.T. It only took 9 episodes for me to get this, but that means spoilers, perspective, interpretations, language, and themes.
Spoilers. While our discussion is about Throne of Glass, important context from the first 3 novels in the series will be discussed without spoiler warnings. That is specifically Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight, and Heir of Fire. This is not a read-along for anyone who hasn't read at least these 3 books, and you will be spoiled from here on out. So please, take this as your only spoiler warning. For all other spoilers beyond Heir of Fire and other SGM works, we will keep those to the Breadcrumbs and Broomsticks area at the end of the episode.
Perspective and interpretation. What we discuss in this episode are strictly our personal interpretation of the text. We do not speak for Sarah J. Maas and in no way know her intentions for her books or characters. We also know our listeners have their own personal views and opinions. We encourage you to share your thoughts with us because every perspective and interpretation is worth exploring.
Language. Even though we do try to keep our swearing to a minimum, explicit language does occur.
Themes. We also, does this mean you realize that I curse a lot more than you on the show or no?
Yep.
Themes. We also discuss some heavy subjects throughout the podcast that can include themes of sex, violence, abuse, depression, self-harm, and death. While we will do our best to give trigger warnings for darker themes, we will discuss these topics when they are important to the text. Listener discretion is advised.
As always, we love keeping the conversation going because our listeners are so good at finding things we've overlooked or missed completely. You can share your interpretation of the text with us by posting on social media, tagging us in stories, sending us DMs, or submitting to the forum on our website. We also post more exclusive content and host live streams for our Patreon supporters. You can find us at patreon.com/booktalkforbooktalk.
Each week we ask ourselves a question, and this week we ask ourselves, I realized that we wrote this question while at a bar last night and 2 drinks in, so it's not fully formed. In what ways are all the main players tainted and unable to see the path of what's ahead of them, or of what's right? We'll get the gist of it.
Unable to see the path forward? I don't know.
We'll get there.
The theme we see in this section is identity. We are in chapter 44, and the King of Adarlan has returned to Rifthold. Immediately, quote, Celaena's heart gave a screech and dove behind her spine. First off, I love this description. I think it's very creative. And I think it also conveys just how out of sorts Celaena's body is, which conveys to us as readers the severity of her physiological reaction.
Yeah, I mean, also you normally have spines that's associated with fear, right? You know, you tell someone to grow a spine or that they're spineless, and then you have the fact that the heart is hiding behind the spine. You're almost wondering, is she more afraid of her own emotions than she is of fear? If that makes sense.
Yeah. You wrote courage, but you said fear. Did you mean fear?
No.
Or courage?
I'm happy with whatever I said that came out of my mouth just now.
Great.
Yeah.
No, I think that's I didn't even think about the idea of grow a spine versus spineless. I think that's a really great connection.
Thank you.
Celaena's scars on her hand also throb, which I'm guessing is in anger, need for vengeance. I'm sure the King of Rifthold has something to do with the scars on her hand.
Yeah, at first I was like, it's because her hands are twitching to kill him and like they're reminding her to like be all stabby. And then at one point, Nox was like, oh, there's a scar on your hand. And I'm like, oh, because of the demon dog thing. So I'm like, oh, right. Her scar hurts because she knows that the king is probably involved with what's happening.
Yeah, and the magic connection,
Yeah.
I'm sure, of the two. Makes
but
sense.
like, you know, she still wants to stab him.
Absolutely.
Understandable. Everything is about her fearing the king, though. Quote, his monstrous form filling the too small hallway and their eyes met. She went cold and hot at once. I really feel like in these chapters, SJM is really flexing her muscles as a writer, and we get some really good descriptions because this description is visceral, right? Like you are feeling what Celaena is feeling.
I agree. And you can kind of see how she's starting to get into her groove as a writer.
Agreed. I'm just going to mention some breadcrumbs because I think it's important to the story because we're going to get a lot of breadcrumbs in these chapters. And it does a lot because it sets us up for the next book without us really realizing it sets us up for the next book. So here are 2 quotes. She could feel him searching, looking for something inside her. Could he see what lay beyond her flesh? It's her fayness. Like, you know, she's waiting for him to see her power. And like I said, in this episode, we're going to get tons of clues to her identity because it's like SJM is really doing the groundwork of here's what's next. And I never appreciated it. Like when I read this for the first time, I never appreciated just how much it just teases out for what's to come.
Yeah. It's, you don't know to look for it as a first time reader. But yes, so well done without being obvious, which I appreciate.
But when you're reading for it, it does feel obvious.
Right, exactly.
I'm sure. Go ahead.
Sorry, I meant like as a first time reader, it's not, I don't feel like it's obvious.
Agreed.
That I would be like, there's something going on.
I totally agree because I feel like for her as a writer, she's probably writing this and thinking like, is this too obvious? Like, is everyone going to catch this from me? Like this, surely they must know what I'm doing here, but I just glaze right past these things.
I did too.
Yeah. Celaena continues to describe the king, quote, there was a darkness in his eyes that felt cold and foreign, like gaps between stars. At this point, we know that's a big clue for what's to come. And I won't say exactly what because, you know, that's spoilers. But what I do want to point out here is the gaps between stars. And what does stars represent as we've been talking about? Dorian. So I think that right here, it's SJM telling you that there's darkness in the gaps between the stars. So of course, Dorian's father would be, you know, starry like him. So I think that this is a big clue as to what's to come much later for the king.
Can you repeat that last point? Because that was a little confusing. So stars represents Dorian. There's darkness between the gaps.
Yeah, so because of Dorian's dad, you know, like Dorian represents stars. So you would imagine that like stars would also be like his dad, but there are gaps between the stars, like darkness between the stars. So I think that this is a great way of describing that someone who is normally bright and shiny, probably like Dorian, has darkness and gaps in between them. So it's another clue, I think, of what's to come. Does that make sense?
That's way better. You did a great job.
Thank you. And then, you know, Celaena takes comfort in Chaol and he's quiet about it, but like, you know, he knows what's something. He is so attuned to her in this episode.
In a way that she knows he's attuned, right? They're attuned to each other at this point because at the beginning of the novel, it was so infuriating to her when he wouldn't say anything and she would mock him and pretend as if they were having a conversation, right? Now it is a comfort. The silence is companionable. It is, it's kind of a space that is their own. Now, when we switch to Chaol's point of view, he is annoyed because it's obvious the king is withholding information. Somehow the king has taken this whole expedition out and he is the only survivor to return. And he looks fine. He hasn't suffered at all. Quote, perhaps he hadn't explained it fully because it would upset his subjects. But Chaol was his captain of the guard. If the king didn't trust him, this is the moment where I think there should be sirens going off. The king doesn't trust him. The king didn't take him out on this expedition. The king won't tell him what's going on.
Everyone died.
Right.
Everyone died. That's a huge red flag.
I don't understand how Chaol doesn't see that, A.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I also understand Chaol having kind of like that blind faith in the king and in the kingdom and what he views as good. So I understand that of Chaol. However, I think the more important question is, why did the king pick Chaol at the age of 22 to be the captain of the guard if he doesn't trust him?
I mean, because he's 22 and he's dumb. Like, you know, a 22-year-old being captain of the guard is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know we're kind of doing this for the sake of the plot, and, you know, this is YA originally, so therefore it's like, oh, really young people in really high positions. But you're telling me that the 40-something-year-old who's been in this like way longer got passed up for a 22-year-old. And you know, the more we're analyzing this, the more it makes sense why this happened. Why would a 22-year-old push this? He's too young to know to push it, you know, like he's not seasoned. He doesn't know the proper way of going about this. Like, I think that by putting someone so green into this position, it makes it so that they're, you know, that Chaol's not willing to challenge the king. It's easy, and, you know, he's young and easier to control and manipulate.
Yep, I agree. I mean, he's basically taking advantage of Chaol's faith, of Chaol's obedience, and his lack of confidence to speak up. Now, while Chaol should be pitying himself, he is, in fact, focused on Celaena, and he pities her for her reaction to the king. Quote, "Poor Celaena. Did she know that she looked like a frightened animal when the king appeared? He'd almost wanted to pat her on the back." Now, this is one of those moments where I'm like, ugh, Chaol. There's a couple different power dynamics at play here. And just in this one thought process of Chaol's, like, again, he should be picking up clues that he's not. The cards are on the table and he is ignoring them. Celaena in this description is a frightened animal. She is prey for the king. Think, you know, I imagine a scared little rabbit and the king is the wolf about to swallow her whole. Chaol thinks he can provide comfort by patting her on the back.
It's so dumb.
It's dumb, and it's very father to daughter, right?
Yep.
It's a father comforting his daughter who just woke up from a nightmare.
Yep.
The mixing of these power dynamics makes it clear to me that Chaol doesn't understand what's happening here, that he's not picking up the clues that are taking place right in front of him, because these two descriptions are not even remotely on the same level.
I also find the concept of patting on the back to be a weird choice, because normally that's to congratulate someone. You pat someone on the back as like a good job, you know, like you did it. Like, I mean, not just like in the world, but like in the descriptions, it's like, gave him a pat on the back. It's an encouragement, which I guess like in a way it's meant to show encouragement here. I love the point that it's a very father-daughter moment here, and it's I think there's a willful ignorance in the sense that he recognized earlier in the book, like, her fear of the king is much more intense than anyone that we've seen for anyone else. But, you know, like, it's fine. He's just like this really innocent guy who comes back after everyone in his crew has been massacred. It's okay.
It's fine. Chaol takes Celaena away from the king eventually, and they go on to training. While Celaena trains, Chaol looks on. Now, remember, we've talked before about how Chaol's point of view is the best way for us as readers to gauge how much progress Celaena has made in her physical recovery from Endovier. Not only is he going to be kind of the most critical or brutally honest, but as a quote-unquote knight and a trained fighter, he has the skills to make what we might call an accurate assessment of Celaena's abilities. So this quote is from Chaol's point of view. "She was incredible now, so fast he had difficulty keeping up with her. It unnerved him, especially when he remembered she was only 18. He wondered if this was how she'd been before Endovier. She never hesitated when they sparred, but she seemed to sink far within herself, into a place that was calm and cool, but also angry and burning. She could kill anyone, Cain included, in a matter of seconds." This is, I would say, like, high praise from Chaol. But even though he marvels at her skill, his doubting Tom persona cannot give her a break. Quote, he was fond of her, but Chaol didn't know if he could sleep at night, knowing that he had retrained and released the world's greatest assassin.
Is doubting Tom a thing?
Yeah, I think doubting Thomas, yeah.
Are you checking it? I've never heard of doubting Tom.
Doubting Thomas is a term for someone who refuses to believe something without experiencing it for themselves.
You know, I have to challenge you. Sometimes you come up with things that...
That's fair.
What's his bucket?
It's of course it's a religious reference, but it's an idiom we use in our day and age, but it's a reference to the Apostle Thomas, who was the one who did not see Christ's resurrection from...
There was an apostle named Thomas?
Yes, there was.
And that's on being raised Catholic and not paying attention in class.
He's the one he's the one who wouldn't believe Christ was resurrected until he could see and feel Christ in front of him.
Whoa. I get that, though. I mean, I just always love the such a random tangent. When I might just like every Easter when it's like, you know, go like be like, and then, you know, Christ was there. And I just love the pettiness because it's always like, and then they ran and then Peter came in second. He wasn't first, like the loser he is. That's the subtext in there. I don't know. Let's continue. That's
so random.
It's just, that's the only one I know. And I just know that Peter isn't very fast. And Judas. Okay.
So I bring up this quote because I feel like it's another Arobin mirror, where Chaol is a lot like Arobin in this idea that he trained and released the world's greatest assassin. However, like Arobin, Chaol didn't actually train Celaena.
Yeah.
Celaena has been trained by other tutors. Chaol was just there to be her sparring dummy. He didn't show her anything she didn't already know. He definitely gives himself way too much credit.
He helped fine-tune her. You know, like she was rusty. He helped sharpen her blade, you know, like in the sense of, I mean, you're just like you're giving me, can I in the sense that like there were times where he was like, you're too far. If you you're aiming too far to the left, and he was right. There were times where he challenged her in the beginning. Like she was rusty. He got her back into shape.
See, I feel like he's not the swordsman sharpening the blade. He's the whetting stone against which the blade is sharpened.
Is that called a whetting stone?
Yeah.
Why do you know things? Why is it called a whetting stone?
A whetstone.
Oh, I know a whetstone.
That's my fault. That's my fault.
Did you call it a wedding stone? Am I?
I said wetting stone, but yes.
And then with the California accent, we can't pronounce our T's worth of shit.
That's exactly right.
Okay, that makes more sense. All right, fine. Yeah, I mean, like he helped. I don't think. Okay, so fine. He's not the blacksmith to have done it, but he helped sharpen her. He's a stone.
But I think that's two very different things, right?
Yeah.
He's not.
But to your point is valid. He does not train her.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you entirely.
Okay, I'll move on. So I harp on Chaol right now, not because I don't like Chaol. I harp on him because he's supposed to be Celaena's love interest in the future. And quite frankly, her kind of love interest now, though she's not willing to necessarily admit that to herself. As a current/future love interest, he continues to distrust her enough to feel guilty for helping her be healthy and at full strength. Doesn't sound like the supportive man we all want for Celaena.
He's like, damn it, why couldn't I have just made her a little bit more sickly?
Why couldn't I have kept her a little bit more weak? But Chaol, poor boy, is confused because not a page later he thinks, quote, right now his focus was on solving the murders of the champions and on making sure Celaena won. It wasn't even about Dorian's pride anymore. Celaena wouldn't survive another year in Endovir. Somebody call an ambulance because I have fucking whiplash. Like, he does not know what the fuck he wants.
Was that your darkened note?
Yes.
Was someone call the ambulance?
Yes.
I love it.
I had to try. I saw your face and I was like, she doesn't think this is funny. Great.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. It's just you held such a high standard for yourself. You set such a high bar for yourself. It's funny. I laugh.
No, it's
internally.
Stop lying to me.
One of our listeners did. Anyway, so no, but it is whiplash. We get Dorian's perspective, and Chaol and Dorian are going to have like their own versions of their goodbyes and kind of like their own internal thoughts. And you have Chaol who thinks like, shit, she's not going to make it in Endovir for another year. So even though he's kind of confused with his own stupidity, he still thinks about Celaena and her. So even though, yeah, Chaol's like, oh no, I made her so strong. Damn it. But he, at the same time, he's thinking she's still not strong enough to make it another year in Endovir. So he does recognize her. However, Dorian, on the other hand, nope, no, that's not my note. Dorian, on the other hand, we'll get there later. I realize that's not this quote, but he's looking as to what were to happen to Celaena. It's removed from what would happen to him.
Yeah, I think your note says Chaol's priorities are shifting, and I think that's a really, really good way of putting it, because it's always been about keeping Dorian safe, helping him win. But now Celaena is part of the equation, is part of what he cares about. Which,
yeah, sorry, go ahead. I was going to take a sip, but you tell me about it.
No, we're both going to take a sip. We're going to move on. We're now in chapter 45. I want to start by reminding everyone of the rule of three. Sometimes Jac and I call this the power of three, which is actually a different thing. When I looked it up yesterday, I was like, oh shit, it's called the rule of three. Okay. It is
yeah, that's fair.
According to the internet.
No, you're right.
So the rule of three is a literary device, and I took this quote from the internet. I think it does a good job explaining the concept. Quote, "The rule of three is a storytelling principle that suggests people better understand concepts, situations, and ideas in groups of three. Over time, the rule has been confirmed by anthropological experts as an archetypal principle that works on three levels: sentences, situations, and stories." Now, SJM loves the rule of three. It's the way she uses it is really, in my mind, about character growth. She always uses it in a way that shows the growing strength or the growing empathy in this case, or something else about our protagonist or other main characters. In this case, in chapter 45, this is the third time that Celaena chooses to help Knox. The first time was during knife throwing. He was terrible at it, so she taught him. And then the second time is when she dove off the tower to catch him in the middle of a test. And now here she is telling him to get the fuck out of the palace. I'm just swearing just because now I feel like I need to swear.
Like you need to catch up?
Yeah.
I do curse a lot. That's why my mommy doesn't like it. But she doesn't listen to the podcast, so what the fuck?
What do we learn as the reader in this instance? I think it really solidifies the fact that Celaena really truly is a good person under her assassin exterior. And no matter how selfish she may have come across at the beginning of the novel, that's not necessarily her truest self.
I love that. I'm really happy that you brought in that. And it's not just a literary device, like you see it in TV, you see it in a lot of other, like storytelling in general. So I do, we went to Romanticycon, we met some amazing listeners, love them all. And I, one thing whenever we meet listeners or sometimes they email, they'll say like, oh, I love like listening because it helps me, be a better writer, and stuff. So I'm like, great, I'll bring in some notes. Here's some of my notes about that I would have given to SJM. So Celaena makes a few big conclusions that I want to talk about. While she's watching Cain, she thinks, quote, "She eyed his muscles, his height, his girth, all strength stolen from the dead champions. She studied the black ring on his finger. Did it somehow have a connection to his horrible abilities?" If I was her editor, I would have made a note here. I think those are two big conclusions for her to have made. I don't remember, maybe I missed it, but like when he is, summoning the and
Ritterak.
That's what I said. Yeah, the Ritterak, thank you. When he's summoning it, it's not like he says, now I'm going to have your power. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
he could have said that. And then it would have made sense, but like, there was no clues there. And again, maybe I missed it. And at the same time, with the ring, that's a huge jump to think that ring is what gives him the power. So, this is a note for the writers out there to just kind of, when you have a character come to conclusions, you have to ask yourself, was this earned? And I don't think it was earned. Yeah.
I think that's a great point. I think as readers, we've already learned it because of Celaena and her
Yes.
interactions with Parrington.
Yeah.
And right now, this feels like SJM being like, shit, Celaena doesn't know. We need to catch her up.
Yep. No,
And that,
truly.
and it's forcing the knowledge rather than earning the knowledge.
Agreed. Agreed. And then Knox kind of teases Celaena, and of course this is going to bug me. Quote, he grinned at her. Seemed like you were rather enjoying the crown prince's attention at the ball. Mind your own business, she snapped. Now, you might hear it, be like, oh, Jack, what annoyed you this time? Let me tell you. It's you enjoyed the crown prince's attention. There is something needy about that. Like saying that you like their attention, it's not even a matter of like, you liked engaging with them. It's receiving. It's that sense of being doted on. It's a sense of being like gifted, It's like, it's not an equal setting, Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Celaena walks away from that night being like, wow, he treated me like an equal.
Yeah.
But here in Knox's description, it's as if the crown prince deigned to spend time with her. Like you said, gifting his time instead of being like, maybe Celaena gifted her time to him.
Right? You little bitch. Maybe we let him die. No, I'd be pissed, but.
Oh my God. Through this exchange, while Celaena's trying to convince Knox that he really does need to leave, she reveals her identity, and he's surprised to learn Lady Lillian is not Lady Lillian. She is, in fact, Celaena Sardothien, and he calls her, quote, Queen of the Underworld. Now, on one hand, this is a breadcrumb for the fact that Celaena is, in fact, a queen of a different land, which we know, but he does not actually know. But when I read this, I was like, never has she been called the queen of the underworld. She's always been called the greatest assassin. So what do we think of when we think of queen of the underworld? I thought immediately of Persephone from Greek mythology. Now, for those of you who need a refresher, Persephone was captured by Hades and taken to the underworld. Her mother, Demeter, I always want to say Demeter, but it's Demeter, the goddess of the harvest, would cause winter and famine when Persephone was not with her. This caused a lot of suffering for humans. So Persephone, to save the humans from dying, bargained with Hades to allow her to leave the underworld for 6 months at a time. She'd go and be with her mother for 6 months. Then she'd come back to Hades for 6 months and therefore created spring. Now, I bring this up because I think this is an excellent way, an excellent lens for us to view Celaena and the people around her. Assuming Celaena is Persephone, who would we assume is Hades? Having read the series, I'm going to assume the King of Adarlan right now. The King of Adarlan killed Celaena's family and essentially brought her to Rifthold. It's not like he physically brought her herself, but that circumstance brought her to Rifthold. So Rifthold is in its own way hell.
I love the thought process. Let me know when I can give a thought.
I'm almost done. So although she was able to remain out of his sights, this competition has brought her back into his orbit. So while she was out being an assassin, honestly, in Endovier, out of his influence, I wouldn't call it spring necessarily, but she's been brought back to hell. She's been brought back in front of the King of Adarlan. Now, who is Demeter? You could say it's Terrasin, whatever. I find this really, really interesting because not only does it kind of align with the Greek mythology, the weather also starts to become cold and snowy throughout this novel.
Yeah.
Celaena has returned to the underworld, and cold and winter has descended upon humanity.
I love that. I think you did. Good job. I love it.
Thank you.
I would like to propose another option because I think like all of this is very valid. I think another option of a Hades would be Erebin because he is the underworld, right? If she was queen of the underworld, then he's the king of the underworld. He made her. He brought her there. But all of it's using your same logic and just applying it elsewhere. But yeah, no, I love that. That's great.
Yeah, I think I guess for me, it was like in a literal sense, if she is queen of the underworld, Erebin is king of the underworld, which I think he calls himself the king of the assassins.
Yeah.
But queen of the underworld is such specific phrasing.
Yeah.
That made me think of Greek mythology.
Oh, I love it. I absolutely love it. So I want to talk about that same quote. I love that you came with it with like kind of like a power perspective. Some might say different literary lenses. My God. And I'm coming about from it from like a little bit more of a feminist lens. And Knox doesn't, just my other side note is like of annoyance because she's like, I wouldn't be here. What does that mean? It means you shouldn't be there. I think you should go. Why? What does that mean? It means you shouldn't be here, bro. Like, I would have left. Like, you do not need to tell me twice. Be like, you really shouldn't be here. All right, I'm out. Like, that's fine. But then you come back to this quote kind of leading up to it. Once that, like, Queen of the Underworld situation, once he realizes who she's kind of hinting that, she's Celaena Sardothien, he says, quote, "You're a girl?" Surprising. I know. Everyone thinks I'm older. So you have this moment of underestimation of her age, right? And gender. Because I don't think that if this was a guy, the response would be like, "You're a boy?"
Right. I completely agree. I get confused every time they're surprised she's a girl because I'm like, but everyone knows her name.
Yeah, I think it's I agree. Because sometimes I think when they say girl, they mean
Age.
age.
Yeah.
I do believe sometimes people like confuse her to having been a man, maybe, but like I agree. Like everyone knows Celaena Sardothien. No one's gonna be like, our old male pal Celaena. Short for Celaena, dude. I don't know, but it's when if you were to say that to Chaol, who is 22-ish, who is young, and someone to be like, you're a boy, like you would never say that to a guy. You would say, oh, how young. So there's a gender element to that. So then I want to come back to this Queen of the Underworld quote. "All of this time, I thought you were just some pretty girl from Belhaven who stole jewels to get her father's attention. Little did I know that blonde-haired girl was Queen of the Underworld." So again, we're getting girl, right? Like, you're just a girl. I thought you were just some pretty girl. And even within this moment, he ages her up. He goes from, you're just a girl, you're just a pretty little girl, to Queen of the Underworld. And queen, is, you wouldn't imagine a child as a queen, right? Like there's a sense of regality. Did I say that yet? Yeah. That was, so that word? Regalness? Regality? I don't know. Like one of these words must be real, but there's a sense of like, her own, if you're going to be regal, you're going to be a little bit older. And he, in that moment, was like, just, oh, I respect you now. You're a woman. You're grown. As they say their goodbyes, Knox tells her, quote, "Do me a favor, Celaena," Knox said. The sound of her name startled her. He brought his mouth close to her ear. "Rip Kane's head off," he's whispered with a wicked grin. Celaena only smiled back at him and nodded. There's a lot of power to name and identity. We've talked about this multiple times, especially since we have 2 layers of hidden identity in this book. But, Celaena at least is one that she's learned to embrace in her own way. And once again, we have this freedom of another person calling her by her name. And we had that last episode when you had the guard who called her Celaena while dropping her off at the party. So it's, she's finding these moments of strength.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is the 3rd time. I think Philippa called her Celaena at the morning on the morning of Yulmis. The guard.
The 3s.
Threes are showing up. At this point, we switch over to Caltain's point of view, and she is high as fuck.
I'm laughing because you always would say high AF, and I'm just proud of you for saying fuck.
Quote, "Caltain fought the urge to rub her eyes as the opium oozed through every pore of her body. In the light of the setting sun, the castle hallways were awash with red and orange and gold, the colors bleeding together."
Now, I'm jumping in because Amy's about to make some really good points, and I don't want to follow up of her good points. So I'm going to make a mediocre point before she does her thing. Basically, you have the sun, which is gold, which is red and gold. So you have this sense of like richness, right? You have the gold, but then it's also bleeding into each other and it's red. What does red usually symbolize? The king. And then we're going to get her in a few chapters or so from now. She's going to be wearing a red cape. So red is completely covering her at this point.
Yeah. And thank you for bringing that up, because I think it does have a lot to add to this point, that symbolically the setting sun, in my mind, is equivalent to the descent of Caltain's consciousness and awareness as a human being. She is giving herself over to this drug and ultimately to Duke Parrington's influence. As Jack said, red and gold symbolize Aderlin and the king's power. And because it's bleeding and it's tainting everything that Caltaine can see right now, I feel like this is a metaphor for that influence, that magical influence that Duke Parrington is using, essentially bleeding into her brain. In some ways, though, it is the opium or the possession, whichever you want to say it is also opening Caltaine's third eye. Now that she's under this influence of dark magic, she can also see dark magic and evil around her. Quote, shadows seem to leak from him, flowing into the stones and the windows and the walls like spilled ink. This is important because we're going to see something similar happen to Celaena later. And so we have to establish, I think, a pattern with Caltaine so that we know how it applies later to Celaena.
I got no notes. You did great.
Thanks.
I thought it was really good points. You covered it all. I'm pleased with you.
Oh,
good job.
Thank you. I can't be funny, but I can make good points.
You're so funny. You know what's funny is that now I'm trying so hard not to laugh when I think of ambulance.
It's fine. I'm not bitter. Okay.
Everyone, if you guys could just like leave comments saying ambulance was funny, that's if we could just get a bunch of Spotify comments or DMs, that would be great. I'll send every screenshot to Amy.
Oh my God. I think I'll be in Korea at the time this comes out.
You have Apple Message, iMessage?
iMessage, it's true. It's true.
You think we're going to not text while you're in Korea? Cute. That's cute.
In last week's episode, we talked about how Celaena really wanted to tell Chaol about the Ritterak and the secret passages, but she didn't yet trust him with the information because, don't forget, there's a secret escape and she wants to keep that hidden. In this next scene with Celaena and Dorian, Celaena decides that, quote, she'd never, not in a million years, tell Dorian about the Ritterak. Why are you laughing?
I'm trying so hard not to. I'm so sorry. I have the giggles. You're so funny.
Take a sip.
You're so funny. I'm so sorry. I'm okay. I'm so okay. You were making more good points. You're smart and funny. All right. I'm going to just hide you. I can't look at your face.
Okay.
Sorry.
Celaena decides, quote, she'd never, not in a million years, tell Dorian about the Ritterak. She might feel something for him, but if he told his father about the power of the word marks and word gates, her blood chilled at the thought.
I'm so sorry. I don't know what's happening. I'm so sorry. I don't feel weird.
Your giggles are keeping you from Disneyland, so...
It's because of the mate.
It could be, actually.
I really do think it is.
Do you feel jittery?
I feel a lot of energy.
Okay, it's the mate. Yeah. It's the mate.
All right, you keep talking. I'm going to I'm just going to take a few bites of this, but you keep talking.
Okay, why don't you mute yourself?
Yeah, well, I mute myself automatically. I do mute the other participant, but I'm going to mute myself too. But I can't laugh while I'm eating, so.
Yeah, that's fair. I bring this up because Celaena has thought before, Dorian's a good guy. He's not anything like his father. However, Celaena treats Dorian the same way Chaol treats Celaena. And that is, she sees the good in Dorian, but assumes the worst. Celaena has not seen Dorian interact with his father. Dorian's not said good things about his father. And yet somehow she still believes that he's going to betray her. And therefore, she does not trust him with information. At least with Chaol, she's like, I need to test him to see if he's trustworthy. And eventually I'll tell him. Whereas with Dorian, it's like out of the question. And I just bring it up because it's another reason why Dorian's not Celaena's real love interest. And while Chaol will also never really be Celaena's true love interest.
Yeah. I mean, this whole interaction with Dorian is very telling to her real feelings for Dorian. We have Celaena who's thinking about the kiss that she had with Dorian earlier, right? And she thinks, quote, she'd expected him to stay away, to move on to another woman now that he'd tasted her. Well, did he even want to taste you in the first place? That's in italics, which is her talking to herself. I thought it was a really weird sentiment. Did he even want to taste you in the first place? Like, he did. You know what I mean? And I
Mhm,
understand her
mhm.
kind of thinking like, well, he's moved on. Like he would have moved on. I'm surprised he hasn't. That's fair, but it's this concept of being tasted. And it's just very much like women are food or wine. There's something to be sampled,
Mhm, mhm.
you know.
Something that spoil easily.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're going to taste wine. You're going to taste this, but it's a little bit and you move on.
Mhm.
So but this whole interaction is very strange between the two of them.
Yeah, and I cannot wait to get to my thought about this, but I'll save it for the end, I think, of
End of the
this.
episode or end of this chapter?
End of this scene.
Oh, okay.
All right. Well, Celaena and Dorian, for whatever reason, are playing chess and they're having fun. Dorian thinks he's winning, and he's not. Celaena's beating his butt. I'm sure on some level this is probably symbolic of them using each other because of this interaction that takes place while they're playing this game. Quote, a smile still played about Celaena's lips, and Dorian reached for her hand. She wanted to pull it away, but couldn't bring herself to do it. This is not the first time we've seen Celaena not want intimacy with Dorian, even though she wants intimacy with Dorian, right? She
Yeah.
wants to kiss him, but she doesn't want him to touch her. And I think part of it is probably because she feels guilty about being intimate in case that's leading him on. Because as much as she expected him to sample her, I think she was sampling him too.
Yes. Yeah, agreed, very much agreed. And then, you at the same moment, you have like while they're holding hands, Fleetfoot quote huffed and then goes underneath the bed. And you have to remember Fleetfoot is very symbolic of Celaena, and we should kind of keep an eye on how Fleetfoot's reacting while Dorian is there. And here they have this like kind of intimate moment, and Fleetfoot is like, I'm out, I'm heading to the bed. You guys are stupid. So, even the dog, the metaphorical Celaena, isn't into this.
Yeah, and I think ultimately it's because she's using him. He is a tool that she uses, and right now it's about using him for her safety. Quote, she'd said that just to keep talking, to keep him here as long as he would be willing to stay, so she didn't have to face the night alone with the threat of Cain hovering over her. Who better to keep at her side in the dark hours of the night than the son of the king? Cain wouldn't dare harm him. We talked earlier in the season about Dorian seeing Celaena as a tool for his rebellion against his parents. And I think this Celaena is kind of doing the same thing. It's a tool for her safety. Having even forming any type of relationship. Why aren't you talking to me?
Mm-hmm.
Reading the same books. That's all about making a connection so that if it ever came down to it, Dorian would advocate for Celaena.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and her thought process is hard because it's very much like a two things can be true situation. Like,
Mm-hmm.
she did like kissing him.
Mm-hmm.
He is a great distraction.
Mm-hmm.
He's also safe to keep, Cain away, and she'll eventually dismiss him because she's like, all right, maybe I shouldn't risk his life. But, there's a lot of true thoughts, which ends up hiding even more true thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. And how does Celaena choose to hide these thoughts? By drowning herself in him. She metaphorically uses Dorian's body to drown out the fears she has about his father and about her past. It's, I feel like, totally intentional because Celaena, who is the embodiment of fire, everyone talks about her burning rage. Fire is doused out by water. And so, how do if she's trying to forget, if she's trying to hide, the best way to do that is to put out her own flames.
Ooh, love it. Love it. And, Celena's the one to actually initiate the kiss. She, quote, surged forward. And then it's not a moment of emotions. It's a moment to silence. It's a moment for her to take control. Because right now she has no control over what happens to her if she were to lose and have to go back to Endovier, if she were to win and then have to become the king's champion, if she were to be alone, if she were to fight Cain. Like, there is nothing she has control over right now. And what she can do, though, is distract herself.
Exactly. I'll read the quote for everyone's benefit. Quote, she let the touch, the taste of him fill the room of her mind with water. She kissed him, hoping to steal some of his air. Her fingers entangled themselves in his hair, and as he kissed her fiercely, she let everything fade away.
Dorian is an escape. And like you said, I love, love, love that he is water to kind of douse her flame. But, and I was also thinking about water. What are some other moments? And I thought about when she was going through the tombs and just kind of exploring the caves, you had water that was a form of cleansing and baptism, but then you also had water that was polluting. So I think that, Dorian is also very cleansing in the way that it puts out the fire. But he's also not the right guy. He's polluted water.
Right. Well, and the right guy would allow her flame to burn.
Exactly.
So let me now dive into my thoughts that some of our listeners may dislike. And that is because I'm going to argue that Celaena and Celaena are mirrors of one another. And now proceed to dislike me even more, because I am going to also compare Dorian to Celaena's opium addiction. Dorian is an opium addiction for Celaena. Now, let me paint the scene for you. Celaena is plagued by headaches because Parrington's trying to possess her. She uses opium to cope with the pain of the headaches, which ultimately bites her in the ass because it weakens her faculties, it weakens her mind, and makes her more susceptible to possession. How is this a mirror with Celaena? Celaena is plagued by her past and the fears that arise from that past, which is equivalent to Celaena's headaches. And those things are caused by the King of Aderlin, aka Parrington, because they're all possessed by the same thing. She uses Dorian, aka opium, to distract herself from these fears and memories. One could argue that this bites her in the ass because her association with Dorian makes her a target in the end. Let me drive this home even more. Throughout this novel, she looks at him. He's so beautiful. He's heartbreakingly beautiful. I just want to kiss him. Constantly, that's her thought is, I just want to taste. I just want to taste. I just want to taste. And now that she's tasted him, she doesn't want to be intimate with him, but then she keeps kissing him. He keeps kissing her. She keeps going back.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's a great point. I mean, Celaena and Celaena are very similar. They kind of have parallel journeys in many ways with this book. And to compare Dorian to opium and for her to get a fix, I love it. Good job. We start chapter 46, and it is early morning of the final duel, and we are getting Dorian's point of view on the prospect of losing Celaena. Quote, and also at this point, he's like out hunting early morning. Quote, he saw her face each time he closed his eyes. She haunted his thoughts, made him wish to do grand and wonderful things in her name, made him want to be a man who deserved to wear a crown. We're getting more emotions from him because, he's saying, he's feeling things. Oh my God. Yes.
Wow.
Wait, no, actually, he doesn't say he feels things. I'm sorry. He is feeling things. It's not but it's not love. It's not anything else. But again, his emotions are surrounding him. It's sometimes, when you write your wedding vows, Amy, I'm going to have notes. Just how I had notes when you gave me your proposal speech.
Yes, you had
I had notes. One of my things when it comes to wedding vows is I know your partner should inspire you, but I always tally how much of the one person is saying, you make me this, you make me that. And it's not about you yourself, my partner. You are an inspiration. You are this incredible person. You know what I mean? So I always flag when people kind of talk about their emotions, and especially in wedding vows of how much their partner makes them feel do X, Y, and Z versus you celebrating your partner. So keep that in mind when you write your vows, Amy.
I think that's a great point. And yeah, that's the one thing I'm terrified. That is the one thing I'm most terrified of writing are my wedding vows.
Oh, I can't wait to review them with you.
Good thing I've got 20 months to do that.
Yep.
While Dorian is thinking about these grand gestures he wants to make on behalf of Celaena, he also reflects on how other women he loved before Celaena. He also reflects on how different the other women are whom he has previously, quote unquote, loved. His words, not mine. Quote, these women had, quote, gazed at him adoringly, while Celaena just looked at him like a cat watching a mouse. We know what this means. Dorian is prey in the context of his relationship with Celaena, which honestly, again, opium addiction.
Yeah.
It all comes back together. On some level, though, he must know that he's a pawn at her disposal. They're not equals in the way that he feels she looks at him. And it's probably ultimately true. Celaena has always been the predator.
Yeah, I just want to go back to what he said way earlier in the book of that he, hates the idea of not having someone be his equal, as a partner, and that like he can't dare be with like boring women. You know what I mean? Like it's like
Mm-hmm.
someone must be valuable like me, and here he
Mm-hmm.
is not being valuable enough for her.
Yeah, I think that's a great point.
Yeah, coming to bite you in the ass, Dorian. Uh Now, while Dorian is, people do not like how hard we've gone in on him, but this is called character growth. He can't start off great.
No, I mean, we're going to be so sad for him very
Oh,
soon.
I can't wait until the next book when we're sad for him and start harping on Chaol. Like, the tables turn with each book. This is a journey that you are on with us. Now, while Dorian is grappling with Celaena, he's hunting and he sees a stag. Quote, "A stag stood 10 yards away, feeding on bark. He stopped his horse and drew an arrow from its quiver, but he slackened the bow. She was to duel tomorrow. If harm came to her..." SJM is using so many metaphors right now, and there's a lot of teasing of Celaena's true identity, which is to do with the stag, which we will often associate with Terrasen. And what makes him think of Celaena in this moment is the stag being in danger. Like, it's even, like he's going to kill the stag and then doesn't because he thinks about Celaena. So it's like there is a connection between the two without us knowing there's a connection.
Yeah, he's not supposed to know that she's from Terrasen, and it's not that he thinks of Terrasen. He thinks of this beautiful creature
Mm-hmm.
that is put on display for me to slaughter. Like that's
Yeah.
what game is. They breed animals just for them to be killed.
And he doesn't even fully think about like what happened. Like if harm came to her,
Mm-hmm.
what does normally that sentence kind of happen? If harm came to her, typically that's followed up with, I wouldn't know what to do. I would
Right.
lose it. You wouldn't say if harm came to her, she would be hurt.
Yeah.
It comes back to an I. You know what I mean? It comes
Yeah,
back like if something happens to her, it will usually come back to an I statement. We don't get that I statement. It's implied, but it goes back to my point that Chaol was thinking about Celaena can't make it in another year in Endovir. Dorian is thinking what happens if I have to see her get hurt.
Yeah. Yeah. It is about him
Yeah.
and how he feels.
Yeah.
Great point. We return to Celaena's point of view, and she's thinking about whether or not she'll be able to defeat Cain and become the king's champion. And if in doing so, she would ultimately be giving up her autonomy and risk violating her morals by working for the king who killed her parents and lots of other people. Quote, "Even with Arabin Hamel running her life, she'd always had a say in what jobs she took. No children, no one from Terrasen, but the king could tell her to kill anyone." Now, in this moment, Celaena's, without maybe intending to do so, Celaena is painting Arabin in a positive light, like he gave her control. He let her have a say. But it's not a lot of control. It's an illusion of control. It's an illusion of autonomy. She's never really had any say in her life. And that continues to be the case if she works for the king.
Yeah. It's funny. I wrote last night when we were in fact at a bar writing notes. It was funny where it's like, we brought our laptops, we're having drinks and everyone's chatting around us. Catcher in the Rye. Go check it out in LA. One of the notes I had was like, this is another theme, which I forgot to include under the themes, but the theme is not feeling in control, particularly Celaena feeling like she's not in control. We saw that with Dorian, and we're seeing this again with the king as well. And we're going to see it with her with Cain. Like she does not feel in control, and I feel like she hasn't been so aware of this as much as she is now, because there is no boisterousness. There is no her overcompensating. This is truly her taking everything in.
Well, I completely agree. And part of it is she can't distract herself by going and doing something else. Like she is on a path that she cannot stray from.
Mm-hmm.
So she really has to face the music.
Yeah.
And think about what are the consequences of this. Now, when Celaena poses her next question, I feel like this is another example of how she prescribes autonomy to her life when in fact she doesn't have any. Quote, "What would she have said to the prince's bargain? Had she known she would come to stand poised to lose so much? Would she have laughed if she'd known that other people would come to mean as much as her freedom? it's such a rhetorical question for Celaena to ask, because even if she knew that she would care about Chaol and Nehemia and Dorian, she still would have accepted because the other option was death.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would say we're forgetting the other option, which is her running off.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
she
yeah,
knows how
true.
to get out, right? Like, and
Yep.
she chose to stay for them. So I think what's also harder right now is like, you know, Chaol and Dorian. I mean, especially Chaol. Dorian doesn't think about this, but like, Chaol's thinking, you know, shit, it's either this or Endovir. And to an extent, Celaena has accepted those as being her only two options when she does have a third one, but she hasn't revisited that because she cares about people now.
Right. Exactly.
We start chapter 47 and we are in Caltain's point of view. Quote, Caltain pulled her red cape around her, savoring its warmth. She is now fully covered with the king's red. He is in control of her. So just remember that when she poisons and laughs at Celaena.
Yes, let's not forget Caltain is not in her right mind. Actually, she probably doesn't even have her own mind anymore. Now, at this point, I'm going to argue Caltain is mirroring Celaena, but instead of mirroring who Celaena is now, Caltain is reflecting the Celaena of earlier in Throne of Glass, the novel. In this moment, Caltain is convincing herself, or has convinced herself, that she's pulling the wool over Parrington's eyes. Quote, he had no idea what she'd do once Sardothien was out of the way. Once Dorian was free again, her blood grew warm and glittering. I really love that description for no reason. This time, we're clued into how wrong Caltain is, right? We know and understand that she is under possession. We can see how her point of view makes her an unreliable narrator, much like Celaena was early in Throne of Glass when she was convinced she was smarter and deadlier than everyone else, despite being a slave for a year and being emaciated. Caltain's descent into possession and her opium addiction is, in fact, the opposite of Celaena's physical recovery from her time in Endovir. So as Caltain has descended, Celaena has ascended. So it's this nice little, like,
it's like
opposites.
in a graph where like the two lines have
intersect.
Different axes. Did I say that right? I don't know math.
It's not axes.
The x-axis, the y-axis.
Yes, but they're going in opposite directions.
Yeah, but at one point they like cross. So what's that intersection cross? Intersection.
Yeah, they intersect.
All right.
Good job.
I'm good with words. That's all I got.
Not math.
No, I have calculators for that.
When Celaena enters the scene of, the duel that's going to take place outside, Caltain thinks to herself, quote, it was strange to think of this woman as an assassin, but seeing her now, all of her oddities and faults made sense. Caltain ran a finger along the base of the goblet and grinned. Does this seem sexual? I think it's supposed to be sinister, but it's not.
It's so Parrington coded.
Yeah.
What did Parrington do before? Like, he stroked the plant, we saw him he's very touchy in ways, he uses his hands to like cover grounds on everything. And yeah, I agree. There is like a weird like sinisterness about it that is so Parrington. Caltain, when Parrington was running this by her, was like, I don't like the idea of poisoning. This actually doesn't seem very, and then she got a headache and was like, yes, please, I will poison. That's a robot voice. We are not getting Caltain. This is a possessed woman here, and who strokes goblets. And at one point, like when Celaena walks in, she observes Celaena's outfit, which I think speaks volumes on Caltain's restricted life. Quote, she wore men's clothes, though Caltain was forced to admit that her black and gold jacket was fine made. Celaena's not wearing men's clothes. She's wearing pants and a jacket, it just shows how restricted her life is, that it's not even like she's wearing trousers, and Nehemia's going to come in with pants too. So it definitely separates the women with the other two women with Caltain.
Yeah, right, because they're warriors, they're fighters.
Yeah.
And you're not going to fight in a dress if you don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at one point in Celaena's point of view, I think there are 13. She observes that there are 13 seats at the spectators' table. And of course, I have to assume 13 is intentional since it's associated with bad luck and ill omens, which is appropriate since Celaena is about to be drugged and not know about it. Celaena sees Cain and all his strength that he's stolen from the dead champions. And when she sees him and how physically large he's become, it makes Celaena nauseous. Now, what do we always say about nausea? It conveys weakness and humanity. And that's not a great way for Celaena to start before the duel has even begun.
I know, right? I kind of want to go back to the 13, right?
Uh-huh.
It's so Jesus coded for me. Last Supper. You got the 12 disciples, you got Jesus, you have like someone's going to betray them. And then you have like Mary Magdalene. You can say that's Caltaine even. You know what I mean? Like there's just, to me, it's like so Jesus coded. Last Supper, which is like supposed to be her last supper too.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point.
We also see how Cain is dressed. Quote, worse, he's wearing the red and gold garb of a member of the guard, the wyvern emblazoned across his broad chest. So obviously this is like to show that, you know, he is the king's man and everything. But Celaena's wearing black and gold and Cain is wearing red, which is the king's color, which, you know, I know it's like literally this is like the, you know, the royal guard, but we're making points. We're confirming.
Even though Celaena's feeling nauseous at seeing Cain, she's able to recover when she sees two former clients at the table, and she decides, based on their reaction and cowering from her, they have been told who I am. And they have realized she is Adarlan's most notorious assassin. And that brings a lot of confidence to Celaena that she uses to her advantage with the purpose of intimidating them in case things don't go her way. Quote, she winked at Lord Garnell, and he paled, knocking over his goblet of hot cocoa and ruining the papers before him. I'm sorry, but something about the goblet of hot cocoa
is so dumb. I want it, though. But, like, what?
It's a little pathetic.
It is very pathetic, but, like, I want it. Does it have marshmallows? Like,
I do imagine little marshmallows going all over the table. Another source of strength that enters the scene is Nehemia in her warrior garb, who has come to support Celaena. Quote, her gaze shifted to Nehemia, whose fierce and graceful eyes warmed the marrow of her bones and steadied her arms. I do appreciate that it's the female friend, the woman, and not the men in Celaena's life who ends up bringing her comfort in this situation. And on some level, it is only Nehemia who can understand what it means to be a woman among men, to be a woman fighter among men. And so I appreciate that little touch.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to keep talking about Nehemia and her outfit. Quote, she wore a spectacular outfit. Close-fitting pants, a layered tunic studded with whorls of iron, knee-high boots. She carried her wooden staff, which stretched as high as her head. To honor her, Celaena realized, her eyes stinging, one fellow warrior acknowledging another. And both of them are othered in this world. They are the two women here who are fighters, who are warriors and are willing to not just like be there, but they're rallying with each other.
Mm-hmm. So we've talked a little bit earlier in this episode, but also throughout the season about how there's power in names. So it's important that as the king begins the competition, he uses Cain's name, but for all the other competitors, he addresses them as possessions of their sponsor. So Cain, my son's champion, Lord, what's his name's champion, et cetera, et cetera. Celaena thinks, quote, of course, the king would know Cain's name. He might as well have just declared the brute his champion. In this instance, only Cain is worthy of identification. All the others are just kind of chum. And that's got to be kind of deflating for Celaena, who's been gathering strength at when people recognize who she is.
Yeah. I mean, it's that theme of identity, right? That's what we were that's the theme of the episode. Identity and the fact that he gets to have one and she doesn't. Yep. But which is why, even though like we're going to get more into, you know, who she fights, Grave, and, you know, being called a bitch and everything, and then her revealing her identity, but like setting that up, here she is again, not getting her name.
Yep.
More appreciation for SJM prose. Nothing to really analyze here, but I just like it. Quote, freedom or death lay at this table. Her past and future were seated on a glass throne. It's just pretty. It's just like her prose are prosing. They're popping. They're doing great.
They are. Well, and I like this idea because her past is a princess past. Her future is Queen of Terrazin. And they both sit on a throne that could easily be shattered.
Yeah, yeah.
When Celaena stops to look at the king, she convinces herself, quote, he was just a man with too much power. And in that one heartbeat, she didn't fear him. I will not be afraid, she vowed, wrapping the familiar words around her heart.
It reminds me so much so of Chaol, like the very first time she meets with the king and Chaol tells her he's just a man, don't be afraid. It's a direct throwback to that moment. And it just makes me excited and happy where I was like, oh, you know, full circle.
Yeah, no, I think I'm glad you remembered that because I did not. As Cain begins his first fight with Renault, Chaol serves his role as father and mentor while he and Celaena watch on. Quote, he kept his attention on the duel. I think you'll be allowed proper time to rest. He jerked his chin at the dueling men. Cain sometimes forgets to guard his right side. Look there. Celaena watched as Cain struck, twisting his body so his right side was wide open.
Yeah, Amy, proper rest time. You know, maybe like at the gym before going to the next thing. Just, you know, you taking a sip, just not even side eye.
The harder we work out with less breaks, the more it's a hit workout in addition to strength training.
My arms are sore. They're like, there's a reason why they're on my side right now. Also, my legs are sore.
My butt is sore.
I can't, yeah. Oh, I just clenched and it hurts.
For all her nerves, Celaena still is enough herself to be annoyed that her opponent is Grave. Quote, across the ring, Grave smiled at her as he wrapped a hand around the hilt of his sword. She bit down on her grimace at the sight of his teeth. Of course, she'd have to duel the grotesque one. At least Renault had been clean looking. It's just funny. It's just cute. It's nice to see Celaena still has personality.
Yeah.
And that SJM carries that through even when Celaena does not maybe feel like herself. When it's Celena's turn to fight, Chaol does the only thing he can do symbolically to show his support. Quote, Celaena turned to Chaol, but instead of handing her the plain as porridge sword she usually wielded in practice, he drew his own blade. The eagle-shaped pommel glinted in the midday sun. I have to hand it to Chaol. That's really kind. That's really thoughtful. I would expect that of him. And we have this significance of the sun as well, representing him. And I applaud you, Chaol. Too bad she doesn't take you up on it.
I think it was a bad choice all around for her not to use that one.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
I think it also shows his way of rebelling against the king, too. You know, like Chaol is so loyal to a fault. You know, he is going to follow proper procedure as much as he can. And this is him breaking away and recognizing what Celaena is, like, you know, what she does. And then when you have the Nehemia coming in and he doesn't fight it, like, that's more rebellion. And it just does something to my heart.
I think that's a great point.
Heart. Thank you.
That's the right way to rebel, Dorian.
Yeah. Dorian, we're going to have issues where it's like, I'm stuck on my throne. I don't know what to do. I don't know. Pretend like you're having an attack or something. Start like pretending like you're having a seizure on the floor. Distract everyone. Is it a bad idea? Well, Celaena's getting her ass kicked.
Oh, okay.
Not at this second.
His dad would not care. The king would not care.
No, but it could cause enough of a ruckus. Anyway, we have this other quote. She found the rolling earthen hills of the north in his eyes. It was a sense of loyalty to his country that went beyond the man seated at the table. Far inside of her, she found a gold chain that bound them together. There are a lot of clues people have talked about how SJM kind of set up Chaol to be her mate. And this is one of those number one clues of them having a gold chain being bound together. And she even has kind of things like this in her other works where, you know, she references feeling bound to one another. There's like the gold, you know, connecting. Throughout all of ACOTAR, we talk about like mates really representing sun and gold. And I think that that was the beginning here. Like Chaol is associated with sun and light and gold. And he ends up not being the guy that she's with. But in ACOTAR, all these clues that she started here and don't pan out, she uses them in that series and they pan out.
Yeah. Honestly, if I was her editor, I would have just deleted the golden chain sentence.
Well, I don't think anyone knew that he wasn't going to be OTP at the end at this point.
Yeah, that's true. That's fair.
Yeah.
That is fair. So Chaol has just offered his sword, but Nehemia offers instead her staff and asks Celaena to take it on this because it's symbolic. Oh, I'm trying to understand my note. Asks Celaena to take on this symbolic burden of proving that the oppressed will overthrow the oppressor by using the staff of the princess of an oppressed people. Quote, "Let it be with an Ilwe weapon that you take them down." Her voice hitched. "Let wood from the forests of Ilwe defeat steel from Adarlan. Let the king's champion be someone who understands how the innocents suffer." The first first question I had after reading this was, does Celaena deserve this opportunity? Does Celaena deserve the opportunity to represent these oppressed people?
It's giving Last Samurai with Tom Cruise.
It really kind of is. But I understand the sentiment on Nehemia's part, and I think that it's a really beautiful thing, and I think that that's a really important.
Yeah, I mean, I do, like, as much as we're pointing out, like, the white savior of it, I will say there's nothing Nehemia can do right now. If she could go and fight herself, she would too. So is there a white savior to it? Yes. However, I will say the circumstances don't allow Nehemia to go in and be the one to kick their ass and use the staff.
Exactly. And it is, and I think Celaena does understand the privilege that it is to do that. It might not be the smartest move, right? Because a sword probably would have fared better for her, but she does do it. And in doing so, she realizes, quote, "As the king's champion, she might find ways to save countless lives, ways to undermine the king's authority." And that, Celaena realized, was what Elena, the king's own ancestor, might want too. So this is kind of a 180 from just a few chapters ago where Celaena was worried about sacrificing her morals to serve the king. She's now realizing she might actually find power in undermining the king despite her subservient position as king's champion.
Yeah. It is such a beautiful moment. It is very poetic, but it's such a bad call. It is such a bad call. Poetry aside, symbolism aside, do the right thing.
Use the sword.
Use the sword. Chaol, like we were saying, he gets to be a little rebel with Nehemia and Celaena. He watches it happen. He steps back. He goes like, yes, go forth. Take the stupid symbolic, wonderful staff, but go ahead and take the wood against the sword. This seems like a great idea. After accepting this act of rebellion, though, Celaena looks at Dorian. Quote, "Dorian was many things, but he wasn't stupid. Had he realized the symbolism in Nehemia's offer, she quickly dropped his stare." Celaena feels some kind of shame to this, a sense of betrayal versus this moment of solidarity. She doesn't feel shame accepting the staff in front of Chaol. She doesn't feel guilty. I mean, I felt guilty as a reader saying no to Chaol. I'm like, oh, but he's going to feel so sad. But Celaena doesn't feel guilty because Chaol doesn't make her feel guilty. He understands entirely what this represents and he is not stopping it. However, the Dorian, on the other hand, she can't meet him in the eyes because Dorian's never expressed his regret and frustration the way that Chaol has.
Yep. Completely agree.
Chaol then kind of gives her a little goodbye and it makes my heart squeeze. Okay, quote, "He didn't say anything. He just took the fingers of her right hand and held them in his thumb brushing the ring she wore." That just like made my heart flutter. Like he's just brushing the ring. The fact that she's still wearing it, it's like a reassuring factor. It's kind of like, I'm with you. I have your back. I am in there with you as much as I can.
Yeah. And it's so intense. I mean, you have a question. Is it on the spot? Is it intentional or just cute?
Yeah. I forgot to ask this.
And we compared this ring to a promise ring, essentially. So it does feel very intentional for him to have touched the ring, being like, when this is all over, we can be together,
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of feeling it has. If I was making this a movie, you'd have a very close zoom in of their hands and his
Yeah.
thumb running over the finger.
Because
Or
it's
the
very
ring.
like, at the altar holding someone's hand while they're about to get married and
Yeah.
stuff. Like
Yep.
I like your idea of like in another world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But too bad, so sad.
Yeah, yeah.
We are now in chapter 48. And let's talk about the fact that during the fight with Grave, he calls Celaena a bitch when she punches him in the nose. And, Celaena has grown up. She doesn't deign a response. But the whole point of this is for them to fight. So why does she have to be degraded for getting a hit in?
I know.
She just did what she was told to do.
I know. It's frustrating. I take great pleasure in calling men bitches. Like whenever I'm mad at like various men in my lives, I'll be like, this little punk ass bitch. Like it's because I think we should reclaim it.
Yeah, I feel so many conflicting feelings about the use of bitch. And
because it is female driven, derogatory.
Right.
Yeah. And then I mean, even every time I call like a certain guy in my life a bitch, it does frustrate me because I know I'm using a female term to put him down.
It's like calling a man a pussy.
I hate
I'm
that.
sorry.
I
sorry.
hate that.
Vaginas are extremely strong and endure a lot. You should call
Yeah.
him a scrotum because those are fucking weak.
Yeah, I agree. No, I am fundamentally against calling anyone a pussy. Like that is a huge, I will like start nagging people if they do that. I
Mhm.
think with bitch, I try to, at least in my mind, associate it with a dog rather than women. And I know it's meant to be like a female dog, but at least it's like in my mind, I'm calling you more of like an animal than
Okay.
a woman.
I don't know why in my head I started singing doe, a deer, a female deer, but it was like bitch, a
Bitch,
dog, a female dog.
a female dog. Be a name I call myself. That's funny.
Now, despite Grave calling her a bitch, when Celaena defeats him, Celaena takes the power away from the slurs and the names that he uses. And it helps that none of them are really her identity, I think. But I love that she is like, I don't care what you call me. Doesn't matter. I fucking beat you. Quote, my name is Celaena Sardothien, she whispered, but it makes no difference if my name's Celaena or Lillian or bitch, because I'd still beat you no matter what you call me.
Oh, I love it. She reclaimed her identity. She
Mhm.
tosses identities around. She doesn't care because at the end of the day, her strength is what matters. I love it. I also love how your note was like, he calls her a bitch and she just kind of runs with it and doesn't do anything to like retaliate. Yeah, she does. She quote, took the handkerchief from her pocket and dropped it on his chest. You can keep that.
In the moment that he called her a bitch, she doesn't retaliate.
No, she just was like, I'm gonna like wait for this. My question is, was she waiting to use this handkerchief? Like, was that like a move she kind of like had on her? Like, you know what? I'm gonna pocket this and then I want to drop it on someone. Like, it just kind of cracks me up. Like, what is she doing with the handkerchief?
I don't know. Is it to wipe the blood from his nose since she probably broke his nose?
No, but that is. So like this is meant to be a gender reversal and an insult to him because men typically are the ones who will give the women a handkerchief when they're crying or something like that.
Right.
Sometimes you will have moments like it depends on like the day and age, to be honest, because like back more in the day it was like women would give men their handkerchief. So I think there's somewhere between a gender reversal / a gender reclaiming or whatever. Again, heteronormative gender roles. But my question is, why does she have a handkerchief to begin with? Is this like was she planning on saving that for Cain? Did she like get ready in the morning and was like, you know what, I'm gonna kick someone's ass today and then I'm gonna do this?
Maybe she thought Chaol was gonna cry happy tears and had it so that she could give it to him.
It's so funny because when she walks off, she goes to Chaol and Chaol's like, was that really necessary? The theatrics of this. They also then do their cheers, like yay, salute, like the king's like, and cheers to everyone. And then the description here is, quote, the conqueror of Eralia raised his hands, begin. And I just love when SJM uses titles over names to describe someone. This isn't the king. This isn't, other names for him. Like he is the conqueror. And it's meant to kind of remind you and sober you in these moments. I think she does a really good job of doing that. And I try to incorporate that in my own writing of like, is this an impactful moment? If I said, rather than he said to Simon, it's like he said to his friend or, to his teacher, like what are those moments that reaffirm and drive home a point that you're trying to make?
Right. And it makes sense in that this is Celaena's point of view. If it was Chaol's point of view, he would never think of the king as the conqueror of Aurelia.
Correct.
So I agree. It helps remind us how Celaena views the king. Now, having consumed the poisoned wine in this cheers moment, Celaena cannot relish her victory against Grave. She begins her duel with Cain, and as she does so, quote, nausea flashed through her. Her blood felt slow and thick, and her head spun. Was she ill? The nausea would not ease. Now, information is power, except Celaena does not have that information right now. Who does? Cain. And we see that in the way that they are fighting. Quote, every time she moved a foot to trip him, each time they came too close, she either became clumsy or he stepped away as if he knew what she planned all along. She had the infuriating feeling that he was toying with her, that there was some joke she didn't understand. And this is when Celaena comes to understand that she's been poisoned. And I love the full circle moment that we get from the poisons test earlier in the novel. Quote, and that's when she knew it hadn't been wine in the glass, but bloodbane, the very drug she'd missed in the test.
I love it as it's a great callback, right? It explains why she wouldn't have caught it now. Like there's a moment of, because at first I was reading this, I'm like, what the fuck? Like, why isn't she recognizing that she's drinking poison? Isn't she this like, great assassin who knows all these poisons? Well, it's the one that she doesn't recognize. However, back to my beta reading here, she doesn't come to the conclusion that she's been poisoned fast enough for my taste.
Mm-hmm.
You've made a very clear point that she knows poisons, that she's an assassin. She doesn't come to the, oh, something's wrong with me. I think I've been poisoned. And that is one that I feel like she would have come to that conclusion very quickly.
Yeah, I completely agree. She stumbles around too much for someone who's smart.
Yeah. I mean, this is her field. So, and you're telling me that she's going to realize that someone's ring is going to give them powers and stuff, but she can't realize that she's been poisoned when she's starting to hallucinate and feel woozy?
Yeah, that's a great point. Cain beats Celaena down while she's suffering from the bloodbane in her system, and Celaena observes that Cain's, quote, eyes were dark, like that portal to that other world. He was drawing out the inevitable, a predator playing with his meal before eating it. He wanted to enjoy every moment. And me at the bar with after 2 drinks was like, food is power.
It is a food is power, though. I mean, we were eating food. You had your fries. I had my cheese sticks.
Yes.
But especially when you consider the fact that Cain has literally consumed the other champions. He consumed their power, sometimes consumed a little bit of them. And, so it makes sense that she is his meal. Food is power.
And by killing her, if he eats her innards, he'll probably gain even more strength.
Exactly. Too much strength for him.
Now, we get to see a glimpse of how the men in Celaena's life are feeling. And Dorian is powerless to stop what's happening. His own humanity is shining through as he watches Celaena be beaten. Quote, he couldn't watch as Cain kicked her shoulder and felt as if he'd vomit when the brute picked her up and she fell to the ground. This is when I think we should, I think in my first read I was disappointed by Dorian. And I think it's a signal for us that he's not the man for Celaena, because he wants to help her, but he feels powerless to do so, but he doesn't even fucking try.
Yeah.
Like,
so I'm saying pretend to have a seizure or something, but anything, that's the thing.
Just get mad. Like, say something.
Yeah. Be like, hey, something's not right. This isn't fair. Something's happening.
Yeah. Somebody poisoned her. Say something.
Especially when Chaol does do something. Like, I get no one can go into the ring and do anything, but later on when we talk about what Chaol does to support Celaena, it's a huge, show of support for her.
Right. But Dorian does not support her, even though he thinks, quote, he had to stop it. Dorian had to help her, but if he interfered, they might just proclaim Cain the victor. So he watched in growing horror and despair as Cain's fist slammed into her jaw. Yeah, that's negative 1,000 points. Now, initially, Chaol is also kind of a stick in the mud in trying to help Celaena. I know that he does try to support her.
My note underneath you is give the man credit.
But in this moment, he kind of
Yes.
freezes.
Yes.
Quote, Chaol had never seen anyone struck that hard. Celaena hit the ground and flipped over and over and over until she slammed into the clock tower. Her head whacked against the black stone and he bit down on his yell, forcing himself to remain on the sidelines, forcing himself to watch as Cain broke her apart piece by piece. I mean, I have to give him credit. Instead of feeling sick to his stomach, he's like, I can't go help her. He's like holding himself back.
Yeah. And he will do something at least, but it is hard. Like I agree with your moment of like just the pure shock because, you know, they've established how giant Cain is, right? That he has gained so much muscle, that he is huge. And Celaena is a young woman.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter how strong she is. You have a big ass man who kicks her like that. It is horrifying to see.
Yeah. Absolutely. Celaena on the ground notices, though, that no one's helping her, right? No one's saying anything. No one's stopping this from occurring. And I love through the description, if you pay attention to the prose, the sun flickers in and out. Like it flickers, a shadow passes over it. And I'm going to change my note. I can tell Jac Amy was drinking.
No, I think you read it. I think we read it and we see what Jac Amy said.
Jac Amy said, even Chaol's presence and love for Celaena is not enough to save her. Current Amy will say Chaol cannot physically help her, but the flickering is kind of like, I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Yeah.
Do you want to read the quote?
Sure, I'll read it. But it's enough for hope. Quote, she heard the scraping noise as his hand came into view, sliding across the flagstone. His fingertips stopped just at the edge of the white line. Celaena, he breathed, his voice laced with pain and hope. This was all she had left. His outstretched hand and the promise of hope, of something better waiting on the other side of that line. It's just, I think there's a lot to be said about like the fact that they're separated by a line, though, a very thin chalk line, and that they reach out for one another. And I think that that is going to be very symbolic of their journey and their relationship. They're just so close of working, you know, like they're just so close of being able to get things together, right? And then it doesn't quite go through. Like it just doesn't connect all the way.
Yeah, for one reason or another, they both draw lines in the sand that don't have to be there.
Yeah.
Or maybe they do. I don't know.
Yeah.
Ask future me.
Future us. You know, I'll talk about this in Breadcrumbs if I can remember. Here's the last quote we will discuss before going into Breadcrumbs. Quote, when she opened her eyes, the world shifted. Blackness was everywhere. Deep down, she knew it wasn't just a hallucination. What she saw, who she saw, truly existed just beyond the veil of her world. The poisonous drug had somehow opened her mind to them. This is just like Haltane that we saw, that opium was opening her third eye, we can call it. But at first I was like, oh, this kind of sucks because like we've been saying that darkness equals truth, and here she is kind of like losing it. However, this is kind of doubling down on what we were saying. In the darkness, she has seen the truth. She has seen, you know, like it wasn't just a hallucination. What she knew, who she saw truly existed. So like, you know, even in this dark effort, I'm like, at first I was like, no, darkness is bad. I'm like, no, darkness is truth. And it continues to be that way.
Yeah, because now she really understands what she's up against, and it's not a man.
Let's get into Breadcrumbs and Broomsticks. Amy, after you.
Thank you. In chapter 44, Chaol, thinking of the king's return to Rifthold, quote, there was something brewing, a cauldron that the king had journeyed to stir. Sounds a lot like a cauldron from another realm, and I wonder if the king is potentially looking for a gateway to Prithian.
Yeah. When I saw cauldron, I was like, trust nothing. I trust nothing.
Yep.
In chapter 45, amid the pounding in her ears and her head, the whisper of wings filled the air. In the space between blinks, she could have sworn she saw things swooping past him in swift, vicious circles, hovering above him, waiting. Ooh! Oh, Amy's note. Gargoyles? Yes, Amy. Yes, good job.
So this is Caltaine seeing kind of the evil around
Cain.
Carrington.
It's
Or
Cain.
Cain. Is it Cain? Well, she's on opium. And it just is a taster for what Celaena will experience later.
Yep.
I can tell I was done with taking notes because my notes are incomplete. At one point, Celaena thinks to herself, quote, unless Elena had something bigger in mind, which dun, dun,
She does.
dun, she does.
She does. Also in chapter 45, quote, they said the evil still crept out in the ruins of the witch kingdom, and that old women with iron teeth still wandered the lonely roads in the mountain passes. Manon. And Baba
Yellow
Yellowtail.
legs.
Yellow legs. Yellowtail.
Someone wants sushi.
Oh my god, I didn't even think about sushi. Oh no. Yeah, there's a lot of, you know what, I'm gonna bring in my thing here. There's a lot that comes with planning ahead and what fits into place. I saw a video on TikTok of something being like, because we're all in spoiler realm, but Yara, that's who Chaol ends up with, right? Yara.
No, it's not Yara. Is it Eileen?
Eileen.
Let me see.
Erin, thank you.
Yeah, Erin.
So someone was making a note that there was, that back in Assassin's Blade, there's like, Celaena meets Erin and, does something to
Irene. It's
Irene. Thank you, Irene. I was like, that doesn't sound right. Irene. But Celaena does something or gives something to Irene, which will eventually kind of come back to Chaol. And then people were like, it was Chaol and Irene the whole time. I don't think people realize how much authors don't necessarily have planned ahead and how many times things happen to fall into place.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's moments like this where we are getting Manon clues. There are, I have no doubt that she has, whether it's Baba Yellow legs, like the one that's not sushi, or if it's Manon, there is a clear, this is what's coming up. And I am excited for that. And I think this has been great setup. Then you have things like Irene, who there's a reason why Assassin's Blade was published third. Because that then sets up as the fourth book. Yeah, you're right. After 3 books, like, is the 4th book that she publishes. Because at that point, she's already published, like, she's already written 4 books. She's now able to kind of go back in time and be like, now let me plant some seeds for what's going to come up. And it was there the whole time. So many times things fall into place. So when we're talking about Chaol and Celaena kind of being like OTP here, authors change their minds, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh wow, that really worked out.
Yeah, and that's, at the end of the day, I feel like authors have to be creative problem solvers because they paint themselves in corners all the time.
Yes.
And so what ends up working is only through hours of being like, fuck, what did I do to myself? How do I get out of this?
Well, and then what's the perfect solution? You go write a prequel though before you finish writing everything else. Like, there is a reason people love the books after they say you get past the first 3 books.
Yeah.
Because I think the first 3 books is kind of her following a general plan versus anything that comes after that is more of a detailed plan.
Yeah, I agree. In chapter 48, Cain speaks to Celaena, but about things he should not know. Quote, Cain let out a breathy laugh. What was it like when you woke up between your parents covered in their blood? So I think we can all agree this is Erewhon speaking.
And not the fancy grocery store Erewhon in LA.
I was going to say, I think only people who live in LA know what that is.
It's like the fancy... No, because Hailey Bieber has her fancy smoothie.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So like maybe very niche people know about it. But Erewhon is like the fancy... they have a strawberry that's $20 and it's a single strawberry from Japan. They have water that's $50.
Yeah, they have lots of really good things for people like me who are allergic to everything, but it's expensive.
It's expensive. We are still in 40. Oh, this is the last chapter, so of course it's 48. Chapter 48, quote, all around her were whispering, laughing, otherworldly voices. They called to her, but called a different name, a dangerous name. Maybe the name of Aelin Ash River Galathinius. who is not afraid.
So when Celaena's third eye opens and she sees the things that are flying around Cain, she describes them as, quote, most of them had wings, and the ones that didn't were carried in the talons of others. Sounds a lot like the adder and the horde that comes from, what is it?
Mist and Fury?
What is the other kingdom? The king, Cauldron.
Highland.
Wow, Highburn.
Highburn. Hey,
So,
I got Highland.
Yeah. In Mist and Fury, when the horde comes from Highburn, the adder and the creatures like him carry each other in talons. So, could it be the same?
If I were to get another Throne of Glass tattoo and do another text one, which, like, I don't know if I would want another text tattoo, but anyway. But I think "and I'm not afraid" is a great one.
Yep.
But you have to say "and."
Yes.
Finally, Celaena is poisoned with Bloodbane, aka Faebane, in Court of Thorns and Roses universe. Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yep.
What? The same poison Rhys is poisoned with in Mist and Fury. Do we know that for sure?
Yeah, it's called. So let me grab my Mist and Fury book, but it's called Bloodbane.
You don't have to grab it. I believe you.
The Suriel tells Feyre that it's Bloodbane that he's been poisoned with.
Oh my god. Good job.
That was drunk me who I wasn't drunk, but that was tipsy me who
Hey, tipsy
that.
You. Let's do more gin. Someone was saying that we should do a tipsy episode of us casting Fourth Wing characters.
I'm just going to be complaining about their height difference the entire time.
But, that's like we are so booked with recordings for the next couple months.
Yeah.
But like maybe in June we'll schedule a tipsy episode.
We can do that.
All right, got a question for you. And the question was more about vibes, so let me see if I can re-ask this. In what ways are all of the main players tainted and unable to see the path ahead of them? The right path.
Yeah, I think... Okay, this is hard. I think we thought we were smarter when we wrote this
really thought we were smarter.
So there are people who are physically tainted, right? The king is physically tainted, though we don't know about it. Parrington, Cain, Caltaine. They're all in the realm of being possessed. And we know that because of like the rings that the men are wearing and the visions that both Caltaine and Celaena see. In terms of Dorian, Chaol, and Celaena, I think right now, none of them are really, I don't know that I would say tainted, but I think that because they've all grown to care about each other, but not enough time has passed for them to really like understand their relationships, they're really, really confused. And that confusion is preventing them from really seeing what it is they want and what it is they don't want. And especially like in Celaena's case, you could argue fear taints her vision right now, that she's making choices she wouldn't make if she wasn't under duress.
Yeah. I feel like if I remember Tipsy S, which is hilarious because Tipsy S was like, we're going to be so grateful tomorrow that we did this. No. I feel no gratitude towards those women. I think what we were talking about was like not just tainted, but like poisoned, right? Yeah. So Caltaine is poisoned with opium, right? Celaena is poisoned with wanting to be with Dorian or like kind of, finding control and trying to take control. Then you have Chaol, who's kind of poisoned with his loyalty to the king and letting that blind him. So I definitely feel like there's a lot of things that are stopping these characters from seeing what's the best path ahead for them. And I don't know what the best path is. Like I can easily come and tell you, well, the best path for Chaol is to get on board with this rebellion and say, screw you to the king. It's not that easy. The best path for Celaena is to like, well, actually, you don't know what the best path for Celaena. You might say, hey, get out of there. It's dangerous. Or you could say, hey, you should be there and help as many people as you can, which is what she kind of comes to that conclusion. It's all murky for everyone. And I think that's kind of what when we were saying, like what's tainted, what's poisoned, is that at this point, no one can see the clear path ahead.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it makes me really appreciate how much time SJM spends on this series, because there's a lot of undoing of, beliefs, morals, mental, just like just simple thought processes
Yeah.
that are ingrained into these characters that have to be broken down before they can evolve and fulfill their destiny. And that's why this isn't 3 books. It's not 5 books. It's 7 or 8. It's a lot. And it's because she has a lot of characters who have to be broken down so that they can be rebuilt.
And that's why we point out when they're breaking down. So that, like, you know, because them being rebuilt, them growing means nothing if they don't start off somewhere and break down. That is why you'll see us go harder on characters midway. We did that a lot when you go to our ACOTAR season and you look at how we talked about Reese in season 2 when we were talking about Mist and Fury. Oh, we went so hard on him. And but like by the end of the season, we're like, and here are the ways that he grew.
Yeah.
So like, you know, you kind of start somewhere and they're like, oh, they kind of suck. And then you go super hard on them. And then by the end, you're like, oh, look, they're better. But do that for 7 books because now it's not just a singular book that they're growing. It's a course of a whole ass season, which means a lot more breaking down.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Book Talk for Book Talk with Jac and Amy. Tune in next week for the season finale, where we will be exploring chapters 49 through 55 of Throne of Glass.
Wow, it really will be the season finale. Ooh. We encourage you to rate and subscribe to our show on your preferred podcast listening platform. We'd also love to hear your thoughts based on today's conversation. If you can submit your comments to our form at booktalkforbooktalk.com for a chance to have your feedback discussed during a future mini episode or on a Patreon exclusive episode.
If you're enjoying the podcast, please visit our website, booktalkforbooktalk.com, to view our latest merch and learn about supporting the show through Patreon or Venmo. You can follow us on TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube. You can follow us on TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube at the handle Book Talk for Book Talk. Bye.
Don't you dare hit stop. I was this close of saying that is the first time we have ever gone through the entire outro, intro, outro, and not have messed up.
My voice cracked. I couldn't help it.
It was like, we were so close. We have never not cracked. We have never not messed up. So close. Drinking mate.
And
it's so bad, but it's so good, but it's so bad.
It's supposed to be a good appetite suppressant as well.
It is, but like, and it's supposed to be good for energy. I got it from the Argentinian cafe because Argentinians do it better, but it's intense.
Yeah.
All right. I am officially taking myself off camera. I'm not looking at myself at all. May my facial expressions
express.